the reason that they are boycotting Barclays, and this is all coming from the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign. Today is one of their national days of action where they're calling on people at branches across the country to boycott Barclays. They say it's because the bank, from their own research, has £1 billion, they say, in shares and provides £3 billion in loans and underwriting to 9 companies, they say, whose weapons components and military technology, they say, are being used by Israel on their attacks in Gaza. So that's why they want people to boycott Barclays, with the idea being that, therefore, if people boycott Barclays and they take their business elsewhere, they won't be able to afford to loan those companies any money, of course. But what we've seen from the likes of Rishi Sunak, of course, on the steps of Downing Street, is that he is saying that there are forces here at home trying to tear us apart and wanting the police to properly police these kind of protests when we see things which are alarming and intimidatory, rather than just maybe mind the protesters. Certainly there was some involvement from the West Midlands Police here in Wolverhampton today when there was a passerby who was obviously growing in frustration at the repeated Palestinian protests in the likes of cities like this in Wolverhampton. He tried to confront the protesters 3 times, going up to them, shouting in their faces. There was a bit of back and forth, but the West Midlands Police did get involved and pull those 2 people apart and then sent him on his way. And finally, after the 3rd attempt, he did leave once and for all. So there was some confrontation, but certainly the police more keen and eager to get involved. But possibly that could just be just because of where we are today. It wasn't so much greater size in numbers particularly. It was small numbers, so that's probably why the police were able to get involved more freely. When we have that first, again, since that point of Rishi Sunak's speeches on the steps of Downing Street on the 9th of March, that big, more national protest for Palestine, that's when we'll really see whether the words of the Prime Minister have been taken in by the likes of the Metropolitan Police down in London, and we'll see then how these protests are policed in the coming weeks.
Did you sense, though, that the police appear to have more confidence in their behaviour? Because a lot of the time when I've watched the police, they've looked somewhat timid when it comes to sort of speaking and approaching protesters.
It's certainly, well, when they kind of got knack of this starting to, I wouldn't say kick off, because there was no kind of physical involvement between the 2 parties, but when the shouting got a little bit louder, the police were straight over just to kind of come and try and pull these 2 people apart and just try and move this member of the public that was obviously not happy with these protests today, move them on. Certainly this morning when we're here observing the protests at the start, there was quite a few members of the police before they realised that there wasn't really going to be too much of a crowd, and obviously they diverted resources. So certainly the police presence has been greater here today than maybe it has been previously. And yes, certainly I'd say, Nana, that my observation is that they were certainly quicker to get involved and not just stand around maybe watching, as some criticism has been of them before.
Listen, Jack, thank you very much. That's Jack Carson. He's our West Midlands reporter. He's there in Wolverhampton. Well, joining me now from Israel to discuss the conflict, there is Mustafa Uri Geller. Uri, thank you so much for joining me again. It's always a pleasure to see you. I wanted to ask you straight away, were Rishi Sunak's words welcome words from where you are in Israel?
Nana, please, allow me to divert your attention to something totally different. Look, okay. Nana, we usually talk about what's going on in Israel. But today, I want to ask, what's going on in Britain? What is happening to your country? So last week, jihadists hijacked Big Ben. Then your MPs say they're getting death threats. And now some Hamas fanboy called George Galloway has been elected. What is happening to British democracy? Nana, listen, will you allow me to deliver a personal message for George Galloway on your program? Please allow me. So listen, hey, George. Now, I know you don't like Israelis and you boycott them as a matter of principle. Yes, you refuse to even meet them. You refuse to meet Israelis. But wait a minute, George. But look at this. Look at this, George. Remember, George, how you came running up to me. Yes, you came to me because I was famous. Suddenly, you didn't really care so much. You put your arm around me, look, and you knew I was Israeli, and you knew that I had served in the IDF. George Galloway hugged an Israeli. What a hypocrite!
Well, listen,
George,
Uri.
Wait. Let me finish.
All right, you finish,
George,
and then I'll speak for George.
Yeah, George. Listen, you are a walking pantomime.
Anyway, sorry, go on, Uri.
About Israel. Look, seriously, here in Israel, we got some terrible news last night. As you know, Hamas has been holding dozens of Israeli hostages for 148 days. Well, now it says that 7 more have been killed. This is unbearable for Israel. We have got to get the remaining hostages out. And lastly, I'll say this. Hostage release talks are going nowhere because Hamas is making impossible demands. Do not forget that Hamas has caused this war. Israel wants to end the war, end the Palestinian suffering, and bring our hostages back. This is where we are.